Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight at another exciting meeting at Tahoe Silicon Mountain. As always, we want to start by introducing ourselves so we have an opportunity to know who else is interested in tech, interested in our topics, and working in the mountains. I'm going to start right over here because several of the people standing here are actually also helping our people who still is coming in to register. So maybe I should say who I am. I'm Johannes Ziegler. I've been here for 8 years, moving up from the Bay Area, and when I'm not here, my day job is to do educational websites and apps. The company name is Mia Plaza.
Hello, my name is Ellen Rayner, and my company is Keep On Movin', and it is an instruction, engagement, and tracking platform for physical therapy home exercise programs.
Hi, my name is Garrett McCullough. I'm a senior mobile engineer for Build.com. I'm also the speaker coordinator for the group, and we are still working on our speaker for July. We have a couple really interesting ones that we're looking at, but I'm waiting for final confirmation before we announce them.
Hi, I am Rachel McCullough, and I own McCullough Web Services. We do web design and development right here in Truckee. I also do all the promotion for this event, so thanks for coming.
Hi, my name is Dr. Barry Treisman. I'm a local chiropractor.
Hi, I'm Dimitri Portniagan. I'm a realtor with Sotheby's.
I'm Carol Hines. I'm the Director of Program Support at theCUBE, and a quick announcement is starting this month, we're vetting folks to go in front of the Reno Angels. This month we're going to put 5 people in front of them to be as a pre-vetting for their presentation to their investors next month. And so if you know anybody who thinks they're ready to get in front of Angels for funding, please come talk to us.
I'm Brad Brighton. My company is UsePayIt. If you paid any attention when you were giving money today, the system they were using to register that was mine, focused on bringing a lot of big business technology to small businesses.
Hi, my name is Steve Hoyt. I do product design and development for companies that don't have in-house engineering, and I'm also part of the Truckee Roundhouse, which is the new makerspace here in Truckee. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me afterwards.
Hi, this is my first time. Dr. Todd Wold with Tahoe-Truckee Unified School District. I'm the coordinator for the Career Technical Education Pathways, as well as the STEAM Summer Academy Director, and teacher of engineering and computer science at North Tahoe High.
I'm Tim Willis-Navage. I'm with Elevate Blue, a tech startup studio in Incline Village.
Kyle Montgomery. I'm a mechatronics engineer with Parallax, doing design of drones used in educational curriculum.
I'm Robert Howell. Excuse me. I'm a web application developer for Clear Capital.
I'm Tansy Maxfield, and I'm local retired, and I come because I get all this information.
I'm Kathy Bacon, and I have a California art teaching credential that's valid till 2018, but I took 3 concussions last year, and so I'm looking for work, but starting physical therapy a little later than the doctors told me to, because I was off in Costa Rica and Laguna and all this and that. Just here to listen and learn and meet locals.
Hi, Scott Montgomery. I'm a retired Silicon Valley software engineer, and I'm on the board of directors of the Sierra Green Building Association. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.
Hi, I'm Jerry Blackwell with Sierra State Parks Foundation, and we have a trip coming up this Wednesday to the California State Parks warehouse. It's a very unique trip. It's a bus trip leaving from Donner State Park at 9 in the morning. Costs $45, and it includes both the bus tour as well as lunch. So if you're interested, get on the Sierra State Parks Foundation website.
I'm Bruce Eisenhardt. I have a company up here called Caridium, and we do embedded system design, both hardware and software.
Hello, everyone. I'm Suzanne Sullivan. I am semi-retired, which means that I failed retirement about 3 times. And I do some contract work with universities on assessment.
Mike Leonardini, I'm a creative director, and I've been doing visual design for the last year for an IT consulting firm doing visual design.
Jeremy Lukensmeyer, I'm a .NET Stack developer and do database work with SQL Server and MySQL.
Hello, I'm Dave Ria. I'm a consultant, and right now I'm working for a lighting company in Reno, so doing dock control and mechanical engineering.
Thank you. I think we've given everybody a chance to introduce herself. Okay, so I understand we're taking a quick break. Is that correct? Yep. And we're on. We're on again. Okay, thanks again for joining us tonight. Before we start with our talk, let's make sure we acknowledge those who make those events possible. And Dmitry will talk about our sponsors.
Sure, we got 4 sponsors this week. One of them didn't make the slide, so Tim's going to talk about Code Academy.
Yeah, so I run Code Tahoe out of the Elevate Blue Accelerated Incline Village. It's a programming boot camp, kind of Code Academy. We just graduated 14 students to the intro class, and our 12-week immersive starts tomorrow, actually, which will teach JavaScript, full-stack JavaScript, Ruby on Rails, NoSQL, SQL databases. Basically, when you're done with the 12 weeks, you'll be ready to land a job as a web developer. So if anyone's interested, talk to me afterwards. We have a few different options. So.
Thanks, Tim. We've also got Clear Capital, who's the leading provider of real estate valuations, data, analytics, and technology solutions to mortgage lenders, services, and rating agencies, and they're right here in town, employing a lot of engineers. We have Holland & Hart, who is a solution custom-tailored and cost-effective legal representation. They have 60 attorneys in Reno, Carson City, and Las Vegas. And anyone here from Holland & Hart today? Okay. Not today? And then New Leaders is a software development company that streamlines your business processes, eliminates redundancies, and creates superhuman employees. They can help automate business workflows, payment systems, SaaS integrations, inventory management, and anything else you need to automate through technology. It sounds like they do it all, so if you guys have technology needs, talk to them. And then we also have our community partners who do pro bono, kind of help us out so that we can get more coverage and get more exposure. So we're working with the Truckee Chamber, and you guys as Tahoe Silicon Mountain members get to attend chamber events for member pricing. So that's something to take advantage of. We have TTC TV, who's helping us live stream this as well as record it, and helping with audio and all sorts of things. So big thanks to them. And now we have usepay.com, as we mentioned in the introductions, that is helping us process all the payment for the event by taking pictures of your credit card. And so they're a local company, so talk to them if you have more interest.
Okay, so with this, to the topic of the night, and I was wondering, why does it feel so relevant? And some of you might remember that I used to bring a bunch of software developers up to Truckee. We rented a nice cabin, wrote software, and then also had some fun outdoors. And then there was this year, 2 years ago, 14, we did the same thing again in September, and then the smoke came in. And the smoke became so bad that we had to leave our cabin and try to find places where we can be in some larger rooms that had still enough breathable air. So wildfires are a reality up here, and that was one of the reasons why we were also starting to look for other locations, frankly, for our software development camps. Luckily, we haven't had that in the past anymore, and we hope that with all those good things that we're going to hear about tonight, it may become even more rare for these things to happen. So I'm very thrilled to introduce Graham Kent. Dr. Graham Kent, he is a local in the sense that he actually grew up at South Lake, at the lake, which is wonderful. Then also went to other places, including University of San Diego, where he got his PhD in oceanography. He is the director of the Seismological Laboratory of Nevada, also teaching as a professor, also seismology at the UNR. The bio actually so long that I have it in writing, but maybe you can just highlight whatever you think is relevant in your talk. And I also noticed that the title of the talk is also so long that I have to read it. It's Wildfire and Artificial Intelligence: How a Middle School Project Turned into Tahoe's Sophisticated Wildfire Early Detection System. So it really combines all that we care about: technology, artificial intelligence, the local environment that is threatened by wildfires, and education for our next generation. So there were even middle schoolers involved. So I think you're the only speaker who managed to put pretty much all that we care about into one talk. So thank you for being here.
Not a problem. Now,
you don't need this. You have the real thing.
Unless someone wants to ask a question in the middle of the talk, which you're welcome to, but someone's going to have to hand you the mic.
Yeah, so there is maybe I'll hand one to Garrett so we have mics at different positions.
About 20 minutes ago. First, thank you for having me here. I just had an epiphany, and I just realized that we weren't supposed to be here, because at the time that the King Fire was making the run, you all lost your homes. And so I don't want you to forget that you're here by the grace of God, that the forecast when it was making its run was to burn over 80 into Truckee. And at that point, there was nothing to stop that beast. So that's how close. Now, I've been burned over once and almost twice, so I know what the final outcome of that is. And so you can be thankful. Just don't think you got away with it. You got away with it once. Before I start talking, we just put a camera up at Peavine Peak. You might recognize 80s that wraps around and goes across the California border. And this was used by local firefighters here to basically provide some early intel on a sage hen fire that happened about a week ago. And we'll talk more about why that's important, but it's kind of self-explanatory that you'd like to know right away. If you can't discover it on the cameras, you'd like to be able to scale up appropriately. So anyway, this camera, we put it up and it's been on fire, literally, because we've been catching fires left, right, and center. Here's the sage hen fire starting up right here. And then obviously someone called in a smoke report. In the old days, firefighters were a little bit at a mix because they didn't know how big it was, right? So you have to say, well, okay, is it the biggest thing in the world, or is it middle size, or is it small? Because in the middle of summer, you may not have the luxury of throwing everything at every fire all the time because you'll get burned, right? So we're both into discovery and early intel, which is important. And here's my infinitely long talk title. Again, I'm representing a group of folks from UNR. We're also working with UC San Diego, so it's an all-in. You'll hear me say that. The first fire that was discovered by Matt Keller, who runs the Camino Interagency Command Center, both a CAL FIRE Forest Service down in Camino, but down close to Placerville. But he was actually outside of Fresno when he discovered the first fire up in Kingsbury. And he sent me an email, and I love that the email title was Keeping the First of Many Small. And that's what we're here about. We're here to reduce the odds of another big one, or an even bigger one. I think it's kind of important to go back historically to understand how we got to where we are. This is the coolest fire lookout I've seen so far. It's just west of Tahoe, Bunker Hill. This would have been a great place to have a camera in terms of understanding the fire behavior of the King Fire. But it's also an historical lookout tower. What's amazing is California, this is also true in other states. I'll use California as an example. They installed over 500 lookout towers. And that was really starting towards the beginning of the 20th century. when climate was more or less chugging along, doing what it needed to do. As the planet started to heat up dramatically, the staffing of fire tower, lookout towers went to the wayside. So in the West, only about 10% of these towers are even manned, and not in shoulder season, which is towards the beginning and the ends of fire season, and you get clobbered there too. So that's kind of just an interesting historical perspective. When I gave this talk to 700 people at the Seismological Society of America meeting in Reno about a month ago, the title of the talk, to be politically neutral, was "Feel the Burn, Making Fire Lookout Towers Great Again." There's a little truth to that title, though, and so we're going to try to go high tech. Now, you're older than I was back when I was 4 or 5, and I'm really old. Just shows you how, both environmentally but really climatically, how things have shifted. Anyone ever heard of the Camp Curry firefalls? Right. This isn't the waterfall off El Cap that like once a year that gets a little bit of a glimmer of light and it turns it into an No, this is, they take the coals and they dump it off and they make a firefall. This is about when they stopped in the mid to late 60s, about right there. And you can see how the planet is starting to warm up considerably. And I was so mad the next year. I remember seeing it, but I remember being really upset about not being able to see it again. And but again, that's how much things have changed. All right, so how the heck did I get involved? Well, I remember as a kid going up and watching some fires burn over by Yosemite off someone's porch, but we were both unfortunate and fortunate to be burned over but not lose our house during the Cedar Fire. And that's a picture on the hillside right next to my house. And this is some cameras we had out on the seismic network that's run by Frank Vernon down at UC San Diego. This is day 2. It was burned over. 1 firefighter was killed. But it really started in time lapse to give us the explosive sense of these fires. So fires, there are some historical fires that were very explosive, but nowadays they all seem to be that way. And so after the Cedar Fire, we started to realize that these cameras could play a critical part in monitoring, because nearly 20 people died in Harbison Canyon because the fire line that was on TV was 10 miles further to the west than was being broadcast. And so the rest is history, as they say. And in San Diego, we got hit by the Witch Fire and then the 2011 fire sequence. So even at that time when I was at UC San Diego, before we came to, I came up to the lab in 2009, we were trying to get some money to do what you're going to see now, and we had no luck. But lo and behold, the King Fire, not the King Fire, the Angora Fire hit, Angora Ridge Fire, in 2007, and that was a game changer for a number of reasons. Not only, what was interesting is I was in Paris at the time, and I had better sense of what was going on in Paris than my friends in the basin. That's never a good thing. People die when that happens. It was $160 million to fight it and homes burned, but the afterglow was $1 billion. So hopefully during questions and hopefully good answer session at the end, let's talk more about, you don't realize how much your businesses are being decimated by fires that never hit your region. So when they hit your region, they're really going to get hurt, but they're being hurt already, and we can talk about that. And more importantly, always listen to kids, because they tend to be smarter than adults. So the system that was being run down in San Diego was more of a monitoring system. It wasn't really like, how do we get on top of these fires early necessarily? And these kids, they were out of Meta Vista down by Auburn, and they were part of this first competition, like robots and stuff. And it was a worldwide competition, and lo and behold, out of 5,000 teams, they went to Copenhagen and won the whole dang thing. And their idea was to put cameras in the forest and crowdsource it, which was their idea. And they called it the Forest Guard. But let's listen to them talk here for a minute.
It's a story about really taking young people's ideas and making them relevant in a grown-up world.
It was all about technology, it was all about how forward-thinking individuals, companies and groups could start to solve some of the world's problems, especially relating to climate change.
It was always a dream, kind of this pipe dream. Like, it's a really good idea, but no one will ever listen to us, no one will ever make this happen.
Forest Guard is basically an early wildfire detection system. It uses solar-powered cameras mounted throughout the forest. From there, they use a radio frequency to broadcast the pictures of the forest to the internet, where anyone can view through a website or software interface. This enables the public to be the forest guards to keep our forests safe.
We went to meet the Forest Guard team, myself and Daniel and Adina, who are two very bright engineers in our R&D group. We went over to Copenhagen to find out more about them. Certainly it was good for us to get a better understanding of their concept and why they'd got to the solution they had and what might be involved in taking it forward.
Here, which is actually just a diagram to show you what it would do, the cameras take the pictures, they can send them to each other, send them to the hub, and then the hub sends it to an internet, the internet sends it to a computer.
The kids have this idea, and they've gone so far as they can go with this idea. The Sony engineers now are going to come and say, okay, how can we make this happen in the real world? And they're the ones that are going to be able to take these children's idea and put it into a real world possibility of happening.
Today is all about evolving the project even further, so taking it from quite a nebulous concept into taking it through to advising, guiding, taking it to prototype stage even, and really testing it and giving a kind of proof of
Great
concept
shot,
really.
and I think about these kids, and I was watching Gilligan's Island, and that's all I thought about, right? Now, has anybody been burned over here? No? Okay. So unfortunately, I have experience with this. And this is Jeff Frost. This kind of went viral a few months ago. Hopefully he's going to do a full-length documentary, but he was able to go out with the PIO for CAL FIRE and get some footage. That's the only thing that is visceral to me if you've ever stared at a 150-foot wall of flames coming at your home. And what's cool about this is he uses time-lapse artistically. We're going to use time-lapse kind of from an engineering scientific standpoint to look for fires. So here we go.
I'm up 155 a little further. I kind of went behind the fire. All right, well, don't move. I'm going to come and try and find you. How far up the road did you go? That's a good question.
So here's an interesting thing that the more we got into this, the more we realize we're into something big, because people aren't really going around looking at the economic damages that are not only from getting burned over and losing your home, but for having the King Fire essentially ruin your September 15th to October 15th up here, and what type of an economic stress that is. We were down at the director of Cali OS the day that the Valley and Butte were pumping, and between those two fires, $2 billion in just straight up losses. $1.5 billion for the fire out again by Napa, the Valley, and the Butte more locally. If you've been down to Jackson, right? $500 million. Now, that doesn't include $1 of the economic afterglow. If you think about what it was for Angora, that number could crawl up to $10 billion. Can your community survive that? The answer is probably not. And so you might not get a do-over. This is where I'm a little bit of a weird kid at heart still, because I guess I think about like soup, vegetable soup, with the alphabet. I don't know, can you still get it as a kid? Maybe that's like, I date myself. But every time we did as a kid, we'd pull out letters and spell words. And we realized this summer we're going to pull out some letters and spell some words. And they're going to be the next King Fire, the next Station, and Weed, and Rough. And the question is it going to be here? You start making a map of this region and realizing where all the 50, 100,000 acre fires, they're surrounding our region. And that's only just random. So the other interesting story is if you just look at the uptick in fires over the last several years, from a California standpoint, it contributes 5 to 7% of the greenhouse gas loading. So if you're sitting there trying to reduce your greenhouse gas footprint, these fires are destroying it. That's like 3 or 4 million cars. So at any rate, we're trying, and this is an outside article that was run last year about our stuff, and so we're going to try to reinvigorate this whole notion of a 21st century fire lookout tower. And we're going to take the kids' advice about making it more social media friendly. Okay, so I'm a Nevada State seismologist and actually oversee earthquake monitoring in your area here at Eastern Sierra. And especially folks in my field, the fire is really different, and so maybe it's obvious to some, but not to many. So we're working, as you'll see in a minute, on earthquake early warning, which might give you the chance 5, 10 years down the road to call your cell phone, call you up and tell you to drop cover and hold on the same network that we're building out early fire detection. Even if we were managed to do that, we could save lives, but the money you can haul out of that's not very much, right? But for example, I can't change a magnitude 6 or 7 earthquake into a 2 or a 3.5. I can take the King Fire and knock it down once the size of this room if we get on it early enough. And there's $150 million in just firefighting alone. And so that's the goal here. Well, why hasn't this been done earlier? It seems, as my wife would say, God bless her, this is the stupidest, easiest thing. Why hasn't anyone else done it? And I can't tell you that other than no one has. I know some of the engineering difficulties, but the older systems that you can still buy today, not very many companies, but at any rate, they're old closed circuit TV, analog, power hungry. You can't share expenses with extreme weather and earthquake monitoring. They're not IP capable. I don't have to tell this group about Moore's Law other than I love it. We're working, for example, with Raul Rojas on machine vision, and he uses machine vision to take that car and drive it from UNR to UNAM in Mexico City and not touch the steering wheel once. So the software that's in pilotless cars are also going to be coming online on our cameras. So again, trying to take something that wasn't possible 5 years ago because of technology and really use this disruptive technology to do something different. And because it's disruptive technology, I hate to tell you, but you're going to see less firefighters hitting the large fires. It's going to be more like special forces, super scoopers, just like you don't see, you know what I'm doing here? No one, right? This is how we used to make phone calls. No one does that anymore, right? So those jobs went away and other jobs came. So there you go. It's more disruptive technology. But one of the things that we have to do as we build this internet of burning things is we have to stay up, whether it's for earthquake early warning, extreme weather monitoring, or fires. And you laugh here, but realize on February 9th, a few years back, Swall Meadows near Bishop burned down in February. So, and I was at the California Tahoe Conservancy. At the time, I didn't know what was going on. I said, wow, if someone starts a fire in Tahoe right now, we're going to lose a big chunk of it. 70-mile-an-hour winds, drought, just bad. So we have to be around 24/7 for everything. Okay, so get to the meat of the talk. So what we've been spinning up is something called Alert Tahoe. You got to have an acronym, right? So access to leverage emergency information in real time. The L was a hard one to think. But it does early fire detection soon enough, earthquake early warning, and then extreme weather monitoring. And we have to build a system that's scalable to the West Coast. We can't, oh, it works with 10 cameras, we put 100 and it fell apart. So that's not going to work. So I can report that we're building it. We're also working in both a private and public way. So whether we're getting funding from BLM or Forest Service or National Science Foundation, we're also doing private fundraising through the Tahoe Prosperity Center. And they've been great. They really took this mantle and have been running. And I think we're pretty much cruising across the six-figure line already. And when I first gave a talk to them, someone said, and this was, I guess this endeared me to them, but someone said, yeah, but I'm paying $117 to CAL FIRE. So why aren't they paying for it? I said, great. So now I have to fix government and put cameras in the Tahoe Basin? And they had a good point. So at some point, although the feds and stuff are coming along, but we're also in a time where we can't afford to see how it works out of 10 or 20 years. So so the Tahoe Prosperity Center has been critical in helping us get cameras where we can't find funding through one means or another, and been very successful at that. So you might like this. So the basics of earthquake early warning is you have a bunch of sensors, you communicate it back, there's a data center, it says, oh my God, there's an earthquake company, I'm going to now contact you, and you better do something about it. Not run outside, by the way, is never the right answer. But the problem is that some of these communication paths, how do you actually do this? Right? Because if I put it on cellular, it ain't going to work, because if there's 2 earthquakes in a row, like 1954 in Nevada, 1987 in California, 92 in California. What we already know is that the traffic on the cell is just going to go away. So if you have a double earthquake or your fire that you're trying to monitor, everyone's like, oh my God, the King Fire's coming, right? And now you have no ability to see anything. So we put out our own private microwave network. And we are in the process of hardening it through being a mesh topology. The cool thing is, just from this is not cool in a good way, but we have all this competition amongst all of our cellular providers, and they're all passing off different so you go microwave for a while off the towers, and then you go into fiber, and then you get back to their mothership, and then you make your phone call. The only problem is they're all cross-leasing everything. And so what happens is someone backhoes one fiber bundle, and a big chunk of central U.S. goes out for 12 hours. Or the north coast of California. LA to San Diego went out for 2 hours 2 weeks ago. We can't build this gigantic system and then have somebody in Texas cut a bundle that caused the West Coast to go out and not have it, and then we have our earthquake or our big fire. And so this professor from University of Wisconsin studied it for 4 years and said nobody has a clue how this works. And he's one of the world's experts. So I know how it works. We have our own separate network, and we try to harden it as much as we can to minimize the chance of it failing. System design, you're all engineers or high-tech types, you get this. You have to have a system that can deal with more than one fire. Like we had 5 fires going here back in late June. And you got these creeps, and they're not necessarily going to just light one fire. Like we had 3 or 4 fires in Reno the other day, and even though they didn't say it was an arsonist, I'm like, come on. And we were watching with the cameras. We could actually see some guy walking down the hill. That was probably the arsonist. So again, we have to have that kind of awareness of what's going on, and you can't just have one camera somewhere and hope it all works out. You got to assume that you might lose some of your stations, the lightning itself. You have to assume that there's multiple fires, and how do you build that topology? Well, you put a lot of cross links and you have a lot of redundancy. So I'll say this time and time again, probably tonight, but the list of people that we need to thank is gigantic. One of the early ones were Homeward Ski Resort. We were so happy that they had snow this year because they've been such a great partner. This is one of their old lift shacks. And so this is what some of our stations look like. At the very top's a camera, some microwave dishes. There's a 4K camera you can barely see, but electronics. And that's just what a node looks like. And now, if you look at this map here around Tahoe, you'll see that what we're building out right now is bigger than Tahoe itself. The cyan colors or light blue are active cameras right now. We're putting in all the green ones this summer. And then next winter, we'll hopefully pick off the yellow and the orange, and we'll actually have a system by next year deployed throughout the area. And yes, we're moving north into the Truckee area. That's not on that map.
Does each station typically have one camera or multiple cameras that can be positioned independently?
Right now, some of our stations have a HD pan-tilt zoom and a static 4K, and you'll see why we might not need multiple cameras in a minute. Just think the alert tile little piece is about right here, like this, but we're also building these networks out across Nevada because they have sage-grouse habitat and they don't want it to burn because you know there's this weird thing about whether it's an endangered species or not. So that's helping fund these cameras, and the idea is to get on these fires early again so they don't devastate the sage-grouse, among other things. And what's great about the BLM, other than they're big supporters of ours, so that's good enough for me, but on top of all the mountains, our stuff is like that guy there and that and that and that and that and that, and the camera on top. But the tower was already there, the building was already there, there's a road cut to the top of the mountain. So it's low-hanging fruit. We can get a camera out there really easily if we have the money. Like, we wouldn't want to have to build a road, right? So again, the way I look at these systems is the gold standard is you discover the fire. If you don't discover the fire, the cameras are pointed early enough that you get early intel. If the colt bolts the barn and you don't get the first 2, then now it's life safety. You get to watch monitor the fire in a way to understand how it's developing and how explosive its behavior is or isn't. This is a discovery on the worst red flag day last summer. This is east of Fallon in the Cold Springs area, and Sierra Front folks down in Gardnerville were watching this and ready to send everybody home because there wasn't a fire. This was a holdover fire, a lightning strike that was a few days earlier, and then it just took off with the wind blowing. And about right now, you start telling everybody that they're not going home early. And again, so now you can get on it right now. Get on the horses and go there and do something. Yeah.
Who's actually watching the cameras? Just the public as a whole?
So these cameras are viewed from the incident command centers like Camino, Sierra Front, some BLM stations out in Nevada, and hopefully soon Grass Valley. And then the individual fire protection districts like North Tahoe Fire have access to turn it. And as you'll see in a minute, the rest of you can watch it and actually spot fires. And the machines, which is the last step. This was now being watched in DC live about 27 hours later. And think about it, in the old days, it was all radio traffic. So now you got down to a few thousand acres, and we're going to go to NearInfrared here in a sec. And so people making decisions can actually just see the fire. There's like this complete telepresence. And now you can see the fire trucks going up and down the road. And it's the difference between watching the Super Bowl or listening to it on the radio. I mean, radio's good, but it's just different when you can watch it. And trust me, we were watching the King Fire come your way. But we only had a few cameras out at the time. Basically, a second is a minute. So if it's an hour, it's a 60-second video. And you can see near infrared. Real infrared goes from about a $3,500 camera to $20,000, and less. And that's only really useful for smoke, as you'll see in a minute. Now, here's a real common mode, and it kind of brings up to how you scale up or not. So this is the Elephant Fire out again in central Nevada. You see some raindrops coming in there. And they got a call in that there was a fire. Now, if you talk to Paul Peterson for BLM, who's the head of the response for the state, he had two choices before this camera was there. He could have sent a spotter plane, which would have taken an hour. And then he'd have known how big it was, and then he could assess how much to attack it with. Or he could have bet the farm and picked some amount and sent it off. He said he would have picked half what he sent. He sent the right amount. They knocked it down 300 acres. So either wait an hour and hope you can catch back up and knock it down, or you basically, he would have been wrong. But in this case, it was just easy. And again, guess what? You don't have to pay for that plane. And that plane costs about what the camera site costs. So the first time you don't have to put out a spotter plane, you've more or less made your money back right away. This is kind of a point about special forces. So we're watching, or Camino's watching this live, and you get the live view, so you don't have to always see it accelerated, but you'll see this little bird flying around. Do you see it up there? That's a super scooper. It's going in, grabbing whatever, 1,600 gallons, flying over, dumping it, coming back in. So now people are in Camino, are watching so they can talk to each other about understanding how to put this fire out on Spooner Summit. So no one's in the blind. So even if you don't discover it, the system's useful. Here's the video game part, which we like the most. So when a lightning storm comes through an area, then we use the time lapse to go hunt, and as we said, hammer fire, get it out, find it early. Whoops. Now if you see over here, this is over by Kingsbury Grade. So you find it right away, and that got passed off to Sierra Front. They put a bucket on it, was out right away. And we kept doing that time after time that evening. Now, this fire was also discovered above Kings Beach, but I'm not going to show you the discovery part. I'm going to show you and watch you what happens when we go to near infrared. There's a couple trees on fire, and you kind of see it chugging along. And we have it right now, our near infrared changes with ambient light, so it automatically, when it gets dark enough, goes to that. This is from like 12 miles. From Heavenly, it looked like that. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, wait, we still have a camera above North Tahoe High. Let's start wheeling that around. So it started going down the east and making sure that all the fires that were on the east side from lightning, that Camino knew, and we all kind of agreed, like, yes, okay, right? And again, essentially, in the end of the day, we ran out of cameras, basically. So even though we had 4 cameras, we ran out. Now, unfortunately, this is an area where we hope to put a camera a little later on this summer for the Washington fire. This thing, from what I understand, that people reporting smoke for even the day before and certainly that morning, and no one could find it, and it would have been really easy. Now, we had just put a camera up at McClellan, just north of Carson City, and we could see it about an hour and a half before anybody else, but no one was watching, and it was a new camera. And so there was an opportunity lost. This point is that you could just understand fire behavior so well when you can just keep going back and time-lapsing and go back and time-lapsing. And again, this is not why we're building this system, but if it does get out, it's life safety and fire behavior. And sometimes, like last summer, you can get 2 for 1. So you get 2 fires on the same day, and here's one up by Lake Village, and this one's up by Sierra Ski Ranch. At any rate, so you need to have multiple cameras, and Camino was doing this and we were doing that because there's just a lot going on, and it's important to get on top of these. So if you want to go to, just type Alert Tahoe and click, and I'm sure you'll get, this is the web page, although there are a lot more cameras on right now. This is during a controlled burn, so I could record it and not be freaking out. But this gives you a sense of how this works. Now, if you're on your iPhone or something, or Android, you just press your finger on the screen and the menu will come up. But you'll see a menu that says what time frame you want. Watch, it's a right click. And that time I pick an hour. So once the lightning storm goes through, you just keep doing 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes.
Hi, this is
wait
Graham
till
Kemp
something
from the
pops
Nevada
up or not.
Seismological Laboratory, and we're looking right now at a controlled burn over on the west
We're in
side
the
of
process
Lake
of putting
Tahoe,
this in the cloud
a
so
little
we
bit
can
north
scale
of,
up so
Tahoe
that
City at Birch
there's a
Creek.
big
I
enough
want to give
situation
you a chance to see
that
the functionality
there was
of,
a lightning
alert
storm that
process of a controlled burn.
up
And
north
if you
in
recall, we do a
Trinity's
right
that
click,
something like
you
42
can
separate
basically
fires.
look at the last
last
15
summer.
minutes of the controlled burn, for example.
If we get 10,000
Pretty
people
spectacular
surfing our
footage.
website, even though we have a 10 gig hookup, we still
And
could
then we're
bring the
tired
whole
of
thing
that,
down.
we
So we're
can,
trying
for
to
example, go over and
scale it
look
up
at
and work
the
with
cameras from
Amazon on
home.
that. But this
We
is
can
our
maybe
basic
do a
thing. The incident
whole,
command centers have them
time lapse
now, both obviously on their laptops, their
Definitely
desktops,
spoken.
their mobile phones. They can pan, tilt, and zoom
again,
the cameras on their mobile
looking
phones
from
too.
Heavenly Ski Valley at Angels Roost.
We are, once we get it on the
15-minute
cloud,
video,
even though you can go now, we'll be more
time-lapse.
aggressive with our Forest Guard
And again,
program
from Snow Valley Creek,
so that
or Snow
people
Valley
can
Creek,
take shifts.
excuse me.
Because again, we want people to kind of volunteer, but
So
make
we
sure
have
we
this
don't
one
have
surrounded, and, if you
100
see over on our
people
map, we
1
have
hour
the,
and none the next hour.
camera
So we're
targets
and
on,
kind of the fun
which you can
stuff
click
is
there.
working with machine
And if
vision
you're interested
to get it in the
about what a
pipeline.
particular
We have stuff
camera
working
is,
offline right now,
you can
but to
right-click
kind of
the
get that a
camera
little
itself,
more
or
straightened
where
out
they
and then
cross.
working. Hopefully by
In
next
terms of
summer
where
we'll have
fire
a
might be,
prototype.
you can
So the machines
basically
can come out and say, hey, I think there's a fire. You might
get
want
a
to look
lot
at this
more by
camera.
right-clicking off the camera where the lines intersect. Yeah,
If you just log on to the pan, tilt, zoom camera, this
to,
is what it looks like. It looks
see
like
the
a,
system
kind of a
while
video
it's,
game.
monitoring a controlled
You
burn.
can go left or
Over.
right, and you just click here and it centers, or you draw a box and it zooms in. It's a very easy interface to pan, tilt, and zoom around. Well, we're working right now, and this is actually kind of a complicated thing, but basically to essentially whip the camera around every 20 or 30 seconds so we have a whole 360. Now that degrades getting a frame every second, which makes better time-lapse movies that we produce every hour. But in our multi-part time lapse on the web, with Java, we do every 10 seconds, so it won't look so bad. But this is just at NOAA, whipping around in 360. So if you start seeing some of our cameras kind of freaking out every once in a while, it's probably because we're testing this out before we deploy it. And again, we're working with Raul Rojas, and so we're feeding him fires from both Southern California and the Tahoe area, so that he can get his machine vision thing working. And again, you're going to see these types of boxes ultimately go on the public website, and so people who are watching can then confirm, and we're putting a Twitter interface in next week. So there's a lot to do. Now here's the weirdest thing. So it's like almost midnight, and I'm looking at this going, damn, I got to call up Paul. It's like, oh, this sucks. Because we just started getting our first Central Nevada cameras out. This fire was 104 miles away. So we're like, what? What happens is smoke plume rises up, and then the near-infrared just lights it up like a Roman candle. I just saw one again out from Jack's Peak into Oregon. It was 99 miles away. My longest one's 135 miles away. Okay, so these aren't 1 acre fires, but if you get something that's several hundred acres in the middle of Nevada or the Sierra, and it turns night, and it's in the middle of the night, they're the easiest things to find. So Again, we could do machine vision with that too, but it was just like, wow. So these cameras from Axis are incredible.
So regarding the NearInfrared, is it the type of thing that, if you have a flare that bright, is it generally always a fire, or do you have natural sources of noise pollution for at least for the NearInfrared that are going to confuse things?
Once you have 2 trees on fire, you're not going to, there's nothing that's, so you know, sometimes if it's a little bit dim, you'll go and go, oh, I'm going to go back to 24 hours ago and compare, just to make sure, do some differencing. But the other thing is they flicker in time lapse. So instead of, if you watch them carefully, they kind of do this. So they have their own like flickering behavior, and it's so obvious. So, like I said, lightning, everyone in the lab. So the joke is with us with the Forest Service and BLM is like, it's not our job to find it, but it's fun. It's like, right, you're making a difference, and it's great. Here's another project, like sidebar that we're working through this project, Wildfire with UC San Diego and the Supercomputer Center down there, is that the other idea is, okay, so you have a fire, and it might be a small one, but can we take the local weather inputs and run some of these standard programs that fire folks normally run, but now they're parallelized and put up on the supercomputer in San Diego, so we can get it out in like 2 minutes. So it's just like on demand. So you can start making decisions based on that right away. You don't have to wait for the bureaucracy and all, finally, right away. So we're working on getting that going this summer too. Here's up on the ridge up at Alpine Meadows. We were just putting a camera up by the chairlift at the very top just so we could watch the fire burn over. And luckily it didn't, because you wouldn't be here right now, nor would I. And it kind of made like this E.T. type picture in the end. It was also freezing up there. But basically to build this system out and run it for 10 years, and again, this doesn't have to come from fire because we're also doing earthquake stuff. We're doing weather monitoring now. But just generally to do it, it's a couple $1 million. Maybe it's 1.8, maybe it's 2.1. You tell me what things are going to cost 7 years from now, and I'll give you a better answer. If you just think about the Angora Ridge fire, right? It's 1.25%, which means I have to build a lousy system to make my money back. 1 in 80. All I have to do is catch the Angora Ridge fire that smoldered all morning and then blew up for an hour and nobody caught it. All I have to do is catch 1 of 80. No, this is easy. That we can do. But the Angora Ridge is nothing. The problem is, and I guess maybe being a seismologist, we think about the 8s and the 7s and stuff, and I think people outside of that kind of weird field of pessimistic people. If you look at the Rim and King fire, the Angora fire was 1 and 3% respectively the size of those 2 fires. So here it's ridiculous. You only have to catch like 1 in 10,000, right? The point being is that the broader point is that the Tahoe Basin could easily see a $10 or $20 billion event. And as I told people, because I have to deal with people, especially on the Nevada side of the coin, from the government, I said, you're all going to look back at 2010 like the good old days. You will crush the local economy. Carson, Reno, Sparks, Tahoe-Truckee, one big fire, a King fire, and it's gone. Not only is it going to be ugly, but your economy's gone. And don't think it isn't, because it will be. You cannot sustain that. Again, the hit on just property alone is in the billions to tens of billions, and you look at the multiplication factor, then you're up in the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 billion dollars. No, it's horrendous. Which gets me to Steve Jobs and Genghis Khan. And this is what drives me crazy. I grew up, I love Keep Tahoe Blue, don't get me wrong, but everyone's running around, right, and shining the silver, and they're forgetting that Genghis Khan is at the gates, and he's going to take everything, and that's fire. So you can spend all the money you want to keep Tahoe clear or blue, but if you have one fire, it's gone. So when you look at the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent in the basin in our local area, and we're doing most of this by people like you and companies privately donating, it gives you pause to realize that we're one fire away. So again, last year was our first year. We had a couple cameras the year before and caught a fire and early intel on a couple, but they were out at the very end. But we're in the order last year of about 25 fires that we provided, early intel, 6 discoveries. We're already up to like 7 or 8 this year. I mean, it's a really bad year, people, let me tell you. There are heroes, both in the BLM and Forest Service, and I've mentioned Paul, Mac, and Kit, and others that get it. The head of the Tahoe Forest, she's very excited about this. So it looks like we have a great ally for you guys, Shelley Allen. So I'm meeting with all those folks on Wednesday. So we'd like to extend it north into, obviously into the larger Truckee area. Because if it starts in Truckee and goes somewhere else, it's not bad for Truckee, it's bad for everybody. One more thing, because I know this is going to be the first question that's asked, and I think it's appropriate. What about drones? So we're passing a basket, and we're going to try to raise $12 million here tonight. And not likely. Well, this is a $1,500 drone and camera set with a radio antenna on it. And the big problem with drones, other than the FAA won't let you fly them, and we understand that, but at some point that's all going to get worked out. The bigger problem is you have a point of view of only the person watching it. So what? Oh my God, there's a fire. Oh, well, what? I don't see it, right? So we figured out how to basically from the drone back make it all IP capable, which means that basically you can throw up a $1,500 drone and have it look like that. And it's downlinking all the data through our high-speed microwave network. Now, of course, we're not going to use a $1,500. We'd use like a $10,000 drone. But get the point that the minute there's a fire, not only do we surround it on all sides, we pop one drone on the top. So that's probably going to be several years away because the FAA is still trying to essentially figure out how this all is going to work. Although all you amateur enthusiasts, I'm sure, will be there before we will because, well, we're not allowed to. So at any rate, hopefully that gave you a little sense of what we're doing. And I'll take some questions and I'll stay afterwards. And thanks for putting up with me.
Okay, so you made a pretty solid argument that this is a pretty urgent issue deserving a lot of support. I'm curious to hear more. How can the community help? Obviously, money would be fantastic, but beyond that, or how is that money ready to be used? What else are you looking for? You're looking for, volunteer. You're trying to organize a thing on the web that needs developers. What other community resources can be could be potentially utilized?
The cheap answer is everything you just said. Okay, so I would say this. It was funny. I was giving a talk at the Tahoe Expeditionary Academy, and you gotta love kids because they're like way too honest relative to adults. And they said, "Well, how much have you given?" And I said, "Well, my wife and I, $3,800." And it actually helped buy the camera that sits above Incline Village. I wonder if anyone in Incline's donated yet. At the end of the day, it's look, I've been burned over. Just watch people that have been burned over. And with these fires these days, you may not be coming back for all intents and purposes. And we can because what will happen is, there's excitement in the room and then people go home and it's like, oh, whatever, it'll never happen to me, right? But it will happen to someone in this room, I guarantee you, in our lifetimes, if not multiple ones. And the larger point is, as we try to get the larger feds and state involved and spin up, I can tell you it takes time. That's why Bernie and Donald have people, forget the politics, people are pissed off because they all know it just takes time. You cannot get government to move very fast. That's where the Tahoe Prosperity Center is helping us basically cut through that red tape. The Rotary has already volunteered to help carry some of our equipment up to several of our installs this summer. So if you guys want to get involved with that and be our mules, have at it. Programming skills, if you guys want to, I'll give you my card. If you want to volunteer time and help us work on cool stuff on the web and make it better, we'd love it. I can't tell you, it's all in. It's funding all in. It's all in people watching the cameras. Right? If one has to get by, done.
Yeah, so I guess when I was
Mr.
thinking,
Positivity here, I'm sorry, but it's...
I was thinking, I was like, who has the most vested interest in, spotting fires, preventing fires, putting them out?
Insurance companies?
Insurance companies. So how are they involved, either monetarily or otherwise? Because it's like, if I'm an insurance company, I'm going to fund all this, because I'm going to save millions and billions. So
I've tried to work with a few folks that work in insurance, and I haven't gotten that connect. But here's a weird
there's
story.
got to be good stats on how much they've spent in the last 20 years on.
Well, the $1.5 billion Valley Fire, well, I can tell you that 800 wasn't insurable, which means they got it for $700 million. If anybody has a connection, now, so here's an interesting group. The insurance companies have now put together this fusion center up in Montana, from what I understand. And they're paid by the insurance companies, and they're taking all this information to give the insurance companies, like, oh my God, this, that, and the other, right? But now they actually have some firefighting squads. So then what? Like they pass your house and knock the fire. So again, they're realizing, I know right after the King Fire, I don't know if it's been released back, but the majors weren't writing policies in the basin, which means that if you're getting a policy in the basin, now you're paying more money because you're going to go with a smaller company. And if you know about Hurricane Andrew, what happens? Small company takes a lot of risk, too much, and then there's no insurance company there. So again, if you're in real estate, you can't sell ash, right? So I mean, it's a big deal. So yeah.
So I just saw one slide that had a dollar number on it. I think it said $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're looking for?
Right now, we're looking for money. That's just kind of what it takes for 10 years. I don't need to pay bills in years 7, 8, 9, 10, right?
Right.
Right now, we're trying to get the cameras out. So basically, through the Tahoe Prosperity Center, we're finishing the first 100,000, which is about 5 cameras, and we're trying the next 100,000, which would get us about 4 more cameras. And that's what we're trying to get out realistically, what we can push out. If some big donor comes up and says, here's a bankroll, or she bankrolled the whole thing, yeah, we can play that game. But we want to get the equipment out now, just because we want it out now and not 5 years from now.
Are there funding sources? I know you mentioned NSF. Are there other funding sources that you can go to for grants?
So on the west side, the El Dorado is stepping up to the plate and funding a bunch of cameras on the west side. And again, we can talk about that. I can talk about it right now. So think about the King Fire, right? Think about the devastation. Well, you guys, as a collective whole, I'm involved too. There's no more Ironman triathlon. You lost that economic driver in your community. Nobody came up here for a month. Just take a small fire on 80. Every car that gets stopped no longer comes up. They're not coming to your community to spend money. You realize quickly that $2 million or $4 million or $1.5 million is lost in a day just by a small fire on 80.
You sold me.
So I mean that's.
So why don't you just ask for the $2 million?
We are.
Yeah. No. Let me talk to you after.
Yeah. Okay.
This is actually.
We'll take in pennies even.
Yeah, this
Go
could
ahead.
be surprisingly related to what's been going on right before this question, but in terms of at-risk acreage or at-risk square miles, how much are you covering right now, and what criteria are you using to determine what gets covered next when money comes in?
Okay, so that's a great question, and I don't mean to be a smart ass, but I will be just a little bit. So you can sit there and you can take a map and go, oh God, let's look at the view shed and where's the coverage and how do they overlap and this, that, and the other. The hell with that. Where can I get permission to put the cameras out? And so from a permitting standpoint is the hardest part. If I can get a permit on a mountain, I can go beg for money. I'm very good at that. And Heidi at the TBC is even better than I am by a lot. So it ends up being kind of this weird, like where we can get permission and the games we play and what we have to do. And you know, like, again, another hero, the California Tahoe Conservancy, gave us the camera above North Tahoe High. And now they're giving us a location up at Alpine Meadows. And they do all the CEQA for us. They just like, where do you want it, Graham? And we're going to roll it through, and God bless their heart, because that doesn't always happen. And so with the El Dorado, they've been working with us really well. And now I'm going to go visit the folks from the Tahoe Forest in 2 days or a day and a half, figure that whole puzzle out. And like I said, Chief Allen is like very supportive, and so we'll just figure out how to do it. It's a very organic thing, which is actually a good thing. Okay.
You mentioned the machine sensing system. How good is that in just detecting the fire at first? Can it pick it up with infrared?
So this is not my field, but I can tell you a little bit about what I see just from an outsider. If you have a blue sky and a green forest and a smoke plume, I can write that code, right? That's not the problem. The problem is I have a green forest and there's a shadow, and then I have these roiling clouds and then the smoke plume coming up. And so what they do to kind of look at pattern recognition is every time that it thinks it sees a fire, you say yes or no. If you say no, it doesn't chuck it. It says, if you see that again, you might not want to call it a fire. So it's
Can you tell the difference on temperature using infrared?
But we're not in infrared. We're at near IR, and then the day we use visible. Okay, so now that $2 million became a lot more expensive. The cameras are $20,000 and they're lower resolution. I can tell you that the best machine vision will never beat the eye in time lapse. So I want to use the machine vision as the backup. I want to get basically it crowdsourced like the kids, because they're smarter than adults. The crowdsourcing is the way to go. Like these last 3 days with the red flag, right? I mean, we should have had 100 people on those cameras, and we would have caught in the Sage Hen 1 like that, 2 or 3 minutes after ignition. Okay, now that one didn't go anywhere, and they got to know how big it was, so they knew what to scale, and I think Truckee Fire pointed the cameras, but you know, the point is not all days are equal, and so every minute you can grab, but it's all in. If it's one time, you know, Scott at Camino sees it, great. Dave at the Sizable, great. Someone on the, you know, crowdsourcing, great. The machine sees it, great. I don't care. We just need to see it early. Oh, we need to, oh, what? He owns the microphone apparently.
So you've talked about a lot of these in Nevada. Obviously, most of the current cameras are around the lake. You've talked about El Dorado. You've alluded once or twice to Truckee, but we're in Truckee now. Can you talk a little bit more explicitly about what is happening, what isn't happening in and around Truckee, Nevada County? What you know, is there you know, are you trying to work through local government? That's
okay. So in Truckee, right? We're working with Sugar Bowl to put a camera on top of and a high-end weather station on top of Mount Lincoln. Okay, which has a great view. You can see Hawaii from there. The Tahoe Prosperity Center are trying to do their last 10,000 of 30,000, and they're going to do some crowdsourcing fundraising here in a few days for Martis Peak. So that's another view into this area. Okay, we have Peavine already covered. And then what we'd probably like to do is get a camera up on Babbitt. We're working with Sage Hen, and even though we're just doing a communications thing for them, we're going to have a Tower 5, which kind of overlooks Independence Lake. So that's another fundraising opportunity. I think when we get Babbitt, Sage Hen, we get Lincoln up, Martis up, maybe, is it Dixie? And then a bit to the north, Sierra Buttes. That kind of like 5 or 6 or 7 is a nice footprint. And that doesn't mean we won't go onto the west side, but it's just, yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm going to go talk to them about. But even from poor little Peavine, we were able to see the first fire of the year here, and the camera was used. So,
yeah, I had a question about satellites. I'd assume that might have been a tool that you could use, but let me guess first why they're not useful. Is it no resolution and you can't point them
It's by the time they use satellites, the colt's out of the barn, right? So.
So in this day and age, we don't have satellites that you could have dedicated to your
I wouldn't say
purpose.
that. Yeah, I would say that they might be used for different purposes. But in reality, I don't even think the best KH 111, 112, they're not going to be able to see these things as quickly as we can. And again, in Tahoe, we get all these controlled burns, so we know exactly, they're lighting it up at 9 o'clock, and we just set a bunch, and there it is. And you know it's just a slash pile. After a few minutes, we can see it. So, again, we just come back and say, why us? But we also understand, we know microwave, we know real-time systems, and the back end is very complicated. So our guys have done a really good job of we did it the first time and kind of like, okay, well, it works. But now, after doing it for 2 seasons, we're like, no. So we're building in all this stuff in the back end so that we can do machine vision, 360 rotation, and everything.
So what kind of range do you able to get with your cameras right now? So, and why couldn't you use things like rifle peak, some of the old towers already up there? Would you have to get special permitting for those or not?
Absolutely. I laugh. We could almost do not only all of the fire camera stuff, but earthquake early warning on all the abandoned fire towers. Straight up. But I'm working, for example, with a communication company down in the foothills that lost a lot of equipment during the Butte fire. And they've been great. And they've said to us, like, you name whatever tower you want to get on, free of charge. They get it. They've seen what, and it's not just the money that they lost. They see the absolute devastation to the Jackson, McCollum Hill area. And they know it ain't coming back. It's not going to like, oh, 2 years from now, it's all over, yeah, great. No, it's a generational event.
But again, how far can you actually see with your camera? You can still tell and detect whether or not it's actually a fire, just to,
at night, it scales, but our furthest fire away is 135 miles, 134 miles, but that was 1,000 acres. I can tell you those little quarter-acre, half-acre fires I can see from any camera in Tahoe, so 30 miles is easy. The fire towers themselves in California are on a grid of about 20 miles, plus or minus, so it's perfectly like right in the meat of where you want to have everything. And they're all just sitting there, just lonely, wanting to have cameras on them.
So what would it take to get, you have to get special permitting to get in those, or?
So what we're doing with the Forest Service is to get around NEPA, or to be in compliance with NEPA, isn't that a better way of saying it? Right, compliance. So if they own the equipment, then they basically, they don't have to re-NEPA. So if I own the equipment, or if I own the equipment and then am stupid enough to want to still own the equipment and not gift it to them, then we could run into that problem. So it's like complete pragmatism. Like, how do we just get the cameras out? So we're working with the Forest Service in Nevada, BLM, we're all just like, how do we get this stuff out?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is an awesome plan. I have never had a fire run over me like you said you have. I didn't know if that meant you were actually there or it just destroyed your property. But what do we do?
Only with my wife and 2 kids and a 150-foot wall of flames, but besides that.
You were right underneath the fire, wow.
And then I bought a house in Reno after I moved up here, and that fire went over the top by Galena High School, and I'm looking at like, really? Like, God. And I'm watering all of the junipers, because my neighbors have never been burned over. And I'm like the new guy, and they're like, oh no, you don't have to do that. I'm like, no, you really have to do this. But I swear to God, it came right down to the high school, the winds turned 90 degrees, started blowing it back towards the Galena Forest. It was like, and then it started to rain. Was, oh my God, I cannot believe it. I'm having a nervous breakdown. The problem right now is these fires are so explosive that you just have to look at a footprint of fires around here and it will freak you out, because to some degree, now all the fires that we either discovered or did early intel, I don't know whether they would have been the one. We don't ever know. All we know is every time we knock them down early, that's one that's not going to become big. And we just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and getting better and more and a larger area and do it, you know.
As just a homeowner
Yeah.
with a home in the forest
Mhm.
up here, how do we keep ourselves alive?
Well, it's kind of like the earthquake thing. You better have a plan. You better know what you want to take out of your house. If you don't know where all your important stuff, go home and do it right now. You don't have to put it in one box, but you better know. You have to know that we learned from San Diego, without technology, people get cut off and people die in Harvesting Canyon. And so even if we can't catch them early, we can provide the intel to work. I mean, it's the fire people using our stuff. I mean, we help as much as we can, emergency management and stuff. But I mean, just honestly, my wife, when we were buying a house, I'm like, I'm not moving into Galena. No way. You look at the whole range front, burn, 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 Galena, burn, burn, burn. So I'm going to try to work with those folks and get a camera up on Ophir Peak, because Sierra Nevada Wireless is now going to give us free access, which could be like $6,000 or $8,000 a month freebie. Okay, so everybody's starting to get it. So no, it's scary. I'm just like, so who knows about Canada, right? Fort McMurray, right? 90 degrees in May near the Arctic Circle. I mean, here's a better way of looking at it, because they're all this, well, if climate change is real, but let's just pretend for a minute. The number of bad days that you're going to have as the climate seems to be changing very rapidly, kind of scary rapidly, the number of bad days just opens up. So you could still have a bad fire in the 20s, but that likelihood of the weather setting up in such a way might have been 10 days or 5 days out of the summer. Now you're running into like 40 days, and soon it will be 70 days. And this is the only way of bending. If we could get into that kumbaya land where all the forests are thinned and the way they need to be, right? We're not there. They were all overgrown, or most of them, and so now we just have explosions everywhere. So how do we get to that point where they're doing it in Tahoe? But that's a lot of money to sit there and thin, right? So unfortunately, we just have a lot of time bombs. So from our standpoint, you have to use technology somehow, other we're sitting ducks.
The quick follow-up to that, Keith on YouTube recommended readyforwildfire.org as a source for information.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of things that, and by omission, there's something I was going to ask you about. You mentioned the rim fire, you mentioned the King fire. Those were air quality events for the area as well, in addition to property destruction and so forth. And I'm up from Reno. One of my side projects happens to be exposing air quality information from the EPA to make it where mere humans can get to it instead of having to have a degree in air quality science.
Yeah.
What is your position or interaction, what has that been with the EPA, for example, in terms of sources of funding or other experiments, projects, cooperation to get this deployed more often?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Right now our cameras, for example, are being used by the National Weather Service in Reno for extreme weather, especially in the summer for lightning, storm or thunderhead development and stuff. They'll use it for like snow level stuff in the winter. And so there's a huge opportunity on the extreme weather side. But we are basically doing wilderness internet, and it's the Internet of Things, although I tease it's the Internet of burning things. Right? And so one of the things you'd like to do is have temperature, fuel moisture, wind, particulates, so we can understand. I mean, you have to realize, so I'm working with someone in the city of Reno, and I've asked, I want to know that whatever economic measure you have for the year before, during, and after, for that 4-week period, I want to know what the hit to the economy was, just the first order cut, right? And the thing is like, think of it this way. You know, my daughter, the cross-country runner, so in college and whatever, right? But all those kids running cross-country or playing football, they didn't get to do anything for 4 weeks. So, and this is not important, but like even their times probably suffered, right? Like the economy suffered, people with asthma suffered. I mean, we're just astounded, honestly. We are astounded that we're sitting at the front of a spear of something that's so bloody obvious, and yet you talk to people and they're like, oh my God, you can do that? And we're like, come on, like really? But we're here. So, but again, what other things you need to put out there, right? I mean, like temperature, right? They can't do an arc storm prediction very well because most of the Met data is sitting in Truckee, Tahoe, Reno. It's not on top of Mount Road. They need gradients. So in terms of guessing whether it's going to be a flood event or a snow event, and whether you're going to get sparks to flood or not to flood, is primarily an issue of lack of data density.
I apologize for
Yeah.
follow-up without a microphone, but more specifically, have you asked the EPA for money, and have they said no, or are you in conversations with them? Because the things that you're talking about, I don't think anybody would argue with, but there are organizations that are tasked with adapting and reacting to the things you're talking about.
But you have to realize, there are 8 people doing this right now at UNR, of which we probably spend, if we're lucky, a quarter of our time on it. Luckily, with my position, my dean said, just go for it. Thank you, Dean Thompson. But, right, this is our hobby, and until somebody steps up with that ginormous contract or that, like where we can scale up in the millions of dollars, I don't have time to go talk to Chubb Insurance. I don't have time to talk to the EPA. Our first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th goals are to get cameras out right now, because that's the primary mission right now.
Okay, then the last thing I'll add to it, and I'll give it up.
Yeah.
I promise, is then define what you need for the next 5 years, or the next year, the next 2 years, and ask for it. You have your $2 million number up there for 10 years, and when Carol asked you about breaking that down, it got kind of wishy-washy. You may have to settle, practicalities being what they are, you may have to receive less than $2 million. You may have to receive less than $1 million. But figure out what it is you want and ask for it. Because then you'll actually get your opportunity to...
I put a number up there, but I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, and I've talked to audiences like you, and then everyone goes rah, rah, and they go home and, I'm going to give you money, and we watch, and no one gets money. So, trust me, I'm beyond that part of the conversation. It's like one great thing I learned, right, as a kid, climbing mountains and climbing El Cap and everything, and the same people in my lab is we're ornery as you know what, and we're going to get to the very top. But in the end, there are a group of heroes, about 100 of them, who are the ones helping 8 people become 108 people. And we love for people in this room to make it 138 people. But at the end of the day, I can't do it alone. And that's the reality. It's like, and there we go. So we need help. Oh, go ahead.
How much?
And another question. We need both. So
how much of a difference? You had said that if the King Fire got over 80, that it would have taken out Truckee. How much of a difference is the thinning and stuff that we do around properties make? Does it give us any chance, or is it, if that fire comes through, like?
Well, if you're going to wait for it to get 100,000 acres, no, you're in a different world. So, again, now if it starts in your thinned area, then you have a chance. It's better than not. But the problem is, you have to, so my house in San Diego was 30 some miles away from Julian, and the fire was just this side of Julian, right? It traveled that distance in 18 hours. And I always tell, I grew up in Tahoe, that's Myers to Incline in 18 hours. And when we used to tell people this after that fire, we'd come up here and say, it could happen up here. People said, oh no, it's not going to happen. You're in Southern California, and they have the Santa Anas, and we have forests, and it could never go that, the King Fire just went 15 miles in a short period of time, in less than a day. So I think what we've realized is that, no, you can have that in this environment. And so even if you thin the forest here, if the juggernaut gets going in a non-thin area, then they can steer it a little bit. But mostly they're going to be telling you to evacuate.
Wow, so...
On that positive note. And I'll stay afterwards.
Yeah, there will be more opportunities to question. So when I started kind of sharing my experience of King Fire, of looking for a room to breathe. Actually, at that point, I didn't realize that, we were still in very good shape compared to what could have happened. So thank you for making that.
I was up at Homewood checking out a future camera location, and I heard the traffic going back and forth with Homewood and Squaw, and Squaw was just like, if you could have seen their face, it must have just drained, because they just got the report that it was going to basically come over the top of them. In some statistical standard, right?
Yeah.
And so you could just see like, oh my God, it's going to come into the basin.
Yeah. It was actually interesting to follow up on that. So where are trustworthy sources? Because I actually heard one report during that event from a meeting of the directors of one of the schools where my kids are, that there is now a chance that it could come over. And then soon after I heard, no, it's not going to happen. It didn't. But was this like, was there, when there was the real danger, was there like the plan to not create anxiety and not communicate that out? Or why have I...
You have to, okay, so I'll use my San Diego experience, right? And the first thing I'll say is the firefighters and all associated people are amazing, and they're working their butt off, right? The Cedar Fire was the size of Rhode Island, 500 firefighters. You string 500 firefighters around the perimeter of Rhode Island, you have no firefighters, okay? That's the first thing. The Rich and Harris fires that happened in 2007, you know how people figured it out? All the cameras were up online on the local San Diego news stations, and we got email after email afterwards. Thank you, I could watch the fire on the cameras, and I knew when to leave. So that's how you do it. That's, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't demand any less of your iPhone or your smartphone, right? This is your life and your livelihood. You need to demand more.
Yeah, so I would say you have convinced us that getting those cameras up is what needs to be done right now. I've already been starting thinking, so once the detection is done, maybe we should think about, okay, how can we be even quicker in getting it out, but maybe the detection is what has to be done first. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. Thanks for staying around a little longer.
No problem.
And as you can see from the number of questions, really...
So I have to leave a positive note, right? Again, the positive thing is we know how to do it, and it's not starting out at Berkeley or Caltech or UW or University of Oregon. It's here. You are the test bed on the planet. So.
Okay. So there's hope. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.